Good evening and welcome to News Tonight, where we get you the biggest news and events from across India and the world. I'm Tina Jha. Let's begin with the top stories of the day. 40-year-old bridge collapses in Kolkata. 1 person dead, 25 injured. Many still fear trapped under the debris. Several vehicles also damaged. Army and NDRF teams engaged in rescue work. Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee orders inquiry. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu calls for reform in reservation system, underscores need for equitable and proportional representation of different castes based on their population. Prime Minister Narendra Modi felicitates national award-winning teachers, urges efforts to bring out inherent strength of students. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu to confer national awards on these 45 teachers on the 5th of September. Chief Justice of India Deepak Mishra recommends Justice Ranjan Gogoi as his successor. Justice Gogoi will take oath as the 46th Chief Justice of India on the 3rd of October, a day after Justice Mishra's tenure ends. And 11 years after the twin bomb blast in Hyderabad, 2 alleged Indian Mujahideen operatives convicted, 2 other accused acquitted. Sentencing on the 10th of September, the 2 blasts in the city had claimed 44 lives and left 68 people injured back in 2007. Beginning with the tragic news, at least 1 person was killed while several others were injured after a portion of the Majid Bridge in Kolkata collapsed on Tuesday. Several people and vehicles are also feared trapped. Relief and rescue operations are currently underway. The 40-year-old bridge in the crowded Alipore area caved in over rail tracks around 4:45 p.m. during rush hour. The bridge runs over the Majid railway station and connects the city centre to Behala and other southern suburbs. Transport and rail services were severely affected owing to the collapse. Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee said the state government will bear the cost of treatment of the injured admitted in the hospitals. She also said the police is investigating the matter.
ফিরাদ হাকিম আরবান ডেভেলপমেন্ট মিনিস্টার এবং শোভন চ্যাটার্জি ফায়ার ব্রিগেড মিনিস্টার এবং কলকাতা কর্পোরেশনের মেয়র তাকে স্পটে পাঠানো হয়েছে এবং চিফ সেক্রেটারি নিজেও কথা বলেছেন হেলথ সেক্রেটারি থেকে শুরু করে প্রত্যেকের সাথে যাতে সঙ্গে সঙ্গে সমস্ত রিলিফের কাজটা ইমিডিয়েট রেস্কিউ অপারেশনটা করা হয় কীভাবে রেস্কিউ করবে কোথায় হসপিটালে নিয়ে যাবে তার সমস্তটাই সরকার দেখছে এবং এটা আমি বলবো যে একটা ঘটনা ঘটেছে দুর্ঘটনা ঘটেছে কেন ঘটেছে কী ঘটেছে সেটা পরে করবো আগে দেখতে হবে সেটা তদন্ত করে নিশ্চয়ই দেখা হবে.
In a tweet, President Nath Kovind said, and I quote, "Sorry to learn of the partial collapse of the Majid Bridge in Kolkata. My thoughts and prayers are with the bereaved families and with those injured in the tragic incident." Prime Minister Narendra Modi also termed the incident deeply unfortunate and hoped for the speedy recovery of those injured. Moving on, in the aftermath of the devastating floods in Kerala, the state has now declared a health alert after 12 people died of leptospirosis or rat fever in the last 2 days. Periods of heavy rain followed by days of little or no rain seems to have aggravated leptospirosis cases in Kerala. Since last month, 372 confirmed cases of rat fever have been reported from across the state. Health Minister K.K. Shailaja has said those engaged in cleaning operations should take the antibiotic doxycycline and not to go for self-medication if they contract fever. The maximum number of cases have been reported in Kozhikode, where a special isolation ward has been set up at the Medical College Hospital. Some of the symptoms of rat fever may be mistaken for other diseases. The symptoms of rat fever include headache, muscle pain, jaundice and diarrhea. But there is concern that some victims have not displayed these usual symptoms. The fever is transmitted through water that contains infected urine from rodents and other animals. It rarely spreads from person to person and can be treated with common antibiotics. The government has asked everyone who comes in contact with floodwaters to take medication as a precautionary measure to avoid an epidemic. Health officials say there is no immediate cause for alarm and that the situation is under control. Doctors also say the outbreak had not come as a surprise and they were prepared to deal with it. So far, the illness has been detected in 5 of the 13 districts that were hit by the floods. And for more on the story, we're being joined in the studio by Rajiv Dasgupta, Professor, Center of Social Medicine and Community Health Social Sciences at the JNU. A very good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us on News Tonight.
Hello.
Sir, first the floods and now the disease. In disasters of such large scale, how can their spread be contained?
Leptospirosis is not uncommon in the coastal areas of Kerala. In fact, leptospirosis has been on the rise in the urban and peri-urban areas of Kerala for a variety of reasons. However, disaster including floods bring in a special challenge, and the preventive measures in a disaster situation include several things. First is access to clean drinking water, which itself becomes a challenge in any disaster situation, and certainly in a disaster of this magnitude, as has happened in Kerala. Second, as we heard, that the reason, the route of transmission is contact with urine of animals, particularly through water and even soil. Therefore, protecting the wounds that one may have is extremely important. So either one has to keep washing the wounds with soap and water, or better still, have waterproof dressing. And the third, of course, is any exposure to the kind of waterlogging and flooding that we have seen entails that one washes one's limbs or extremities that have been exposed to water.
Yes.
But much of this is actually easier said than done, because we have seen the extent and severity of this calamity.
Sure. Sir, leptospirosis is not a life-threatening disease, and as you mentioned, it's also not uncommon in Kerala. So this time around, why do you think it has claimed so many lives? Is it because the health centers are still reeling under the impact of the floods?
Part of the reason, of course, is that normal services are certainly disrupted. Even health workers and their families are also victims of this disaster. So even maintaining normal services become a challenge. And of course, there are relief and rehabilitation measures that are put in, and therefore personnel and services do come in from the outside. So they sort of balance each other. However, the point here is that because the infection is very much present in the coastal areas, and because of the fact that there has been very large-scale waterlogging, leptospirosis cases have occurred, and it's not unusual. However, the important point is that up to 5 to 15% of mortality can happen. That's in the natural history of the disease.
Yes.
Secondly, that many would actually have a milder form of the disease. So this disease actually has 2 phases. Initially, there's a period of fever which almost resembles viral fever, and there can actually be diagnostic confusion. But some would actually go into the second phase, which is really the more dangerous phase, where complications and even deaths can occur.
So, sir, in situations like these, where a situation like this can't be avoided, so what are the steps that the government can take to prevent and also make the citizens aware so as not to contract the disease?
Well, the government has very limited options in a disaster of this scale.
Yes.
These options are, as we were discussing, one is, of course, advisories. Second is to make clean drinking water available as soon and as widely as possible. Again, given the scale of this disaster, it has been extremely difficult. And third, to make health services available. Medicines, of course, these are relatively simple antibiotics, oral antibiotics that are easily available. However, the severe cases will require intravenous antibiotics in a smaller proportion of these cases, and that's something that really needs to be available.
Also, sir, the state of Nagaland at present is reeling under severe floods, not it's not as severe as it is in Kerala, but of course the situation remains grim. What do you think the northeastern state can do, in fact, plan better so that a situation like Kerala, an epidemic outbreak, does not occur there?
Leptospirosis is, of course, not certainly not endemic in the northeastern states.
But the other kinds of waterborne diseases.
However, it's important to remember leptospirosis in flood drills. But the central focus of flood drills and relief services are about provision of water, provision of sanitation, the usual drill against waterborne diseases, particularly diarrhea, typhoid, or in somewhat longer term, some forms of jaundice or hepatitis.
Yes.
And of course, vector-borne diseases, which is mosquito-borne diseases, which can be malaria largely, and also dengue, chikungunya, because they have become, in fact, endemic in urban situations particularly.
Yes. All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on News Tonight and sharing your views. Moving on, flood situation continues to remain grim in many parts of Uttar Pradesh. Heavy rains claimed 23 lives in the state during the past 36 hours. Bundelkhand and western part of the state is now facing the flood fury. After the release of 5 lakh cubic water from the Matyala Dam, Yamuna and Betwa rivers are in spate, flooding many villages in Hamirpur district. Due to heavy rain in western part of the state and water coming from Uttarakhand, Ganga and its tributaries are also flowing above the danger mark in many districts of the state. Rains also lashed parts of the national capital on Tuesday, bringing relief to people after a humid morning. Although rains brought relief to the city, the morning showers slowed traffic in major roads across the capital and caused water logging in several areas. On to some other news. A day before their felicitation, Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with winners of the National Teachers Awards at his residence today. The Prime Minister commended the dedication of the teachers towards their profession, which he said has improved the quality of education in the country. He also urged the awardees to work towards bringing out the inherent strength of students, especially those from poor and rural background. During the interaction, the awardees narrated inspirational stories in transforming their schools into centers of learning and excellence. The teachers will be conferred the award for 2017 on Wednesday. This year, the HRD Ministry revised guidelines for the selection of teachers for the national awards. Under the revised guidelines, all regular teachers were eligible to apply and the minimum 15 years of service had been done away with. The teachers got the chance to directly apply and nominate themselves for the award. Self-nominations from teachers were invited online.
सर मेरे को तो ये लगता है कि ये चयन प्रक्रिया जो हुआ है ये बहुत बेहतर है और ये बहुत पहले से हो जाना था। इसमें अभी जितने भी 45 टीचर हैं उनको मैं 45 रत्न के रूप में मानता हूँ। कारण इसके पीछे ये है कि ये एक ट्रांसपेरेंसी है टोटल ऑनलाइन। हमने खुद ही अपना नॉमिनेशन किया है।
हमने एज ए हेडमास्टर सबसे पहले ये देखा कि कैसे गर्ल्स एजुकेशन को बढ़ाया जाए। इस पर हमने हेडमास्टर के रूप में पहले कम्युनिटी मोबिलाइजेशन किया। उससे कम्युनिटी के जो सबसे निचले तबके के लोग थे, वहाँ अधिकतर मजदूर किस्म के लोग थे, तो उन लोगों से संपर्क किया। संपर्क करने से ये हुआ कि उनका विश्वास हमें जगा और छात्राओं को वो भेजना शुरू की।
ईच एंड एवरी पर्सन आर वेरी एनर्जेटिक और सभी ने अपने क्षेत्र में यूनिक अलग ही काम किया है। और यदि इस सारे काम को हाईलाइट किया जाए तो मुझे लगता है एक प्रेरणा पूरे समाज और देश को मिलेगी, जिसमें लोग कुछ और आगे आके काम करना चाहेंगे।
Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu has pitched for reforms in the reservation system. In an interview to news agency PTI, the Vice President said that there is unrest and unease in sections of communities entitled to quota benefits, as they believe that only a few among them are getting quota benefits. Stressing that reservations should not be tinkered with, he called for equitable and proportional representation of different castes based on their population. The Vice President also asserted that reservation that has been guaranteed should be there. The ruling NDA government had appointed a commission last year to examine the subcategorization of almost 5,000 castes in the central list of OBCs. This to ensure more equitable distribution of reservations in central government jobs as well as educational institutions.
There is a need to move towards ensuring proportional representation inclusive development of all groups, especially those which have till now has been underrepresented. Mr. Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers and all the parliamentarians sitting here, my appeal to everybody is that we must see to it that the benefits of reservation reach each and every section. Each and every section, for whatever legislation you want or changes you want to bring in, this should be done. Because people's aspirations are very high, expectations are high, communication is there, people are seeing what is happening and all. So I hope the backward class, the scheduled caste, people of different communities, sub-communities, they also get justice in the course of time, and we all move in that direction.
In an interview on the occasion of completing 1 year in office, the Vice President said restoring the prestige of the upper house is his immediate priority. He also called for reframing of rules to take care of erring members and suggested stricter provisions in the anti-defection law. He said that he handled 2 key events in his 1 year tenure that include the disqualification of Sharad Yadav and a notice by the Congress-led opposition to impeach Chief Justice of India Deepak Mishra, which he rejected within days of receiving it. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has issued an advisory to all private satellite TV channels to use the constitution term of scheduled caste to refer to the community. The ministry has asked channels to comply with the Bombay High Court's directive. The advisory urges channels to refrain from using any other word while referring to the people belonging to scheduled castes. The court directive in June had come over a petition before the Nagpur bench of the High Court. The advisory issued in August has also cited a Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment circular of the 15th March, advising the central and state governments to use the term scheduled caste. And Chief Justice of India Deepak Mishra has recommended the name of Justice Ranjan Gogoi as his successor. Chief Justice of India has sent a letter to the central government recommending Gogoi's name on Tuesday. He has also written to the Ministry of Law and Justice endorsing and recommending the name of Justice Gogoi, the senior-most judge, as the next CJI. CJI Mishra leaves office on the 2nd of October. The Law Ministry had last week written to the CJI requesting him to recommend the name of his successor. Now, the Law Ministry will put the recommendation before the Prime Minister, who will advise the President on the appointment. Time for a short break. News and updates will continue on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching News Tonight. 2 Indian Mujahideen operatives have been convicted in the 2007 Hyderabad twin bombing case. The quantum of punishment for both convicts, Anik Shafiq Syed and Ismail Chaudhry, will be announced on the 10th of September, along with the verdict on the 5th accused. The Special National Investigation Agency Court acquitted 2 more accused in the twin blast case that claimed 42 lives and left 68 injured. 2 blasts had occurred at Gokul Chaat Eatery in Koti and the Laser Show Auditorium at Lumbini Park around 7:45 p.m. on the 25th of August 2007. While 32 people were killed at Gokul Chaat, 10 people lost their lives at Lumbini Park. An unexploded bomb was also recovered from Dilsukh Nagar the same night. Army Chief General Bipin Rawat said that Army personnel cannot be denied use of smartphones. Delivering a keynote address on social media and the armed forces, General Rawat said that social media can be leveraged for psychological warfare and deception, not just in conventional warfare, but also to combat proxy war, insurgency and terrorism. General Rawat added that the Army is developing a mobile application, Arpan, to benefit the Army personnel and their families. The Army Chief said if the armed forces do not keep pace with time and the manner in which the social media is moving forward, then it will be firefighting to keep up with time.
Social media is becoming a cause for concern. हमारे जो एडवर्सरी हैं वो सोशल मीडिया का भरपूर इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. हमको भी अपनी तकनीक इस्तेमाल करके सोशल मीडिया को काउंटर करना पड़ेगा और सोशल मीडिया को अपने एडवांटेज के लिए इसको अपने जवानों को एजुकेट करना पड़ेगा, अपने अफसरों को एजुकेट करना पड़ेगा और हम इसीलिए एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन क्रिएट कर रहे हैं जिसके जरिए हम सोशल मीडिया को भरपूर तरीके से अपने एडवांटेज के लिए इसे इस्तेमाल कर सकें.
On the second leg of his three-nation tour, President Nath arrived in Bulgaria's capital Sofia today. In a special gesture, Bulgarian President Rajiv and the First Lady of Bulgaria received President Kovind at the hotel where the Indian delegation is staying. Sharing his admiration for the Indian culture with President Kovind, Rajiv mentioned Buddhism and yoga. Indian Railways is expecting to save 13,000 crore rupees per annum in fuel bill by its massive rail electrification drive. Minister of State for Railways Manoj Sinha said on Tuesday. Sinha, after the electrification of railway lines is completed, he confirmed that the actual savings due to initiatives in energy procurement has so far been 7,504 crore rupees.
Indian Railways is taking several concrete steps to check energy consumption. One of these measures is rail electrification with special focus on solar energy. Addressing a conference on e-mobility in Indian Railways, Union Minister Manoj Sinha informed that 4,000 kilometers of railway track were electrified in 2017-18, while in 2018-19, the figure was 6,000 kilometers, accounting for substantial savings in fuel costs annually.
इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन की गति को हमने आगे बढ़ाया है। कई बार दोहराया गया कि 4,000 रूट किलोमीटर हमने किया, अगले साल 6,000 करेंगे, उसके आगे 10,000 करेंगे और 4-5 वर्ष में लगभग ये इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन का काम हम पूरा कर लेंगे।
Underscoring the significance of the railways, Chief Executive Officer of Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, said that shrinking market share of railways is not good for the country.
I'm really delighted that Indian Railways is partnering with Niti Aayog in this unique initiative. Because one of our great worry has been that the share of Indian Railways, the market share of rail sector has been falling significantly due to the inability of the rail system to carry the growing traffic. And it has been yielding its share to the road sector, which is not good for the country. So it's not a correct thing. And for India, if it has to grow in a very sustainable manner, railways have to play a very critical role. Its share must grow. And the pace of development of railways infrastructure must grow at rapid pace to meet the demands of Indian economy.
Indian Railways has taken several measures to replace diesel locomotives with electric engines. Special attention is also being paid to dedicated freight corridor and consumer services. Arvind Kumar Singh's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Civil Aviation Minister Suresh Prabhu has said that India plans to construct 100 airports at the cost of about 4.2 lakh crore rupees in the next 10 to 15 years. He said the country's aviation sector is one of the fastest growing in the world and has recorded 50 months of double-digit traffic growth. Prabhu added that these airports are to be constructed through public-private partnership. He also said the government is also working on a cargo policy. According to global airlines grouping IATA, India is expected to overtake Germany, Japan, Spain and the UK within the next 10 years to become the world's third largest air passenger market. Also, a report by a Sydney-based aviation research body has said that the Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi could overtake London's Heathrow Airport in traffic volume by the year 2020 financial year. India and the US will solidify their global strategic partnership in the inaugural 2+2 dialogue on Thursday. Both sides will focus on significantly boosting military ties and ironing out differences over India's defense engagement with Russia and crude oil import from Iran. News reports suggest that the two sides will also seek to finalize an agreement on encrypted defense technologies, deliberate on ways to boost counter-terror cooperation, look for increasing engagement between their navies in the Indo-Pacific region, and also try to resolve tariff-related issues. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will hold the twice-postponed talks with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. Chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff General Joseph Dunford will also be part of the US delegation. The focus of the talks will be to lift the strategic engagement between the two countries to a whole-of-government approach, covering a wide range of areas for cooperation. India will also try to sensitize the US that any cut in import of Iranian oil in compliance with the US sanctions may impact the country's overall economy, as the crude oil from that country is much cheaper. A felicitation function was organized for the Asian Games athletes in the national capital today. The government felicitated the medal winners with cash awards after the country registered its best ever medal haul in the history of the Asian Games. Home Minister Rajnath Singh, Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan and Sports Minister Rajya Singh Rathore were present on the occasion, along with several other union ministers. During the event, Rajnath Singh congratulated all the medal winners and also praised Sports Minister Rathore for his commitment and dedication towards developing sports in India. Remember, India registered its best ever haul in the history of the Asian Games, bagging 69 medals that included 15 gold, 24 silver and 30 bronze. And that's it from us in this bulletin. Thanks for your time.